I'll explain these names. Zhang Zhidong is the viceroy of two provinces, Hubei and Hunan, which Hubei at the time was very important because that's where all the inland trade happened. And so this is a group, what we call the provincial Han officials with actual power. These are the people who fought against the Taiping Rebellion. A lot of them fought against Taiping Rebellion, including Li. And then they actually held their own armies within the provincial level, because after the Taiping Rebellion, the central government has weakened substantially. So these people, they're Han, so they're not Manchurian. They are mostly scholars. They have their own administrative and judiciary and military power within their provinces. So like very strong group of people. So he would be the viceroy of both Hunan and Beinan. Chen is Hubei's. No, Chen is Hunan. Tan is Hubei. So it's interesting. At that point in time, there was a provincial of one province, and then there will be, of the two provinces, there will be another head. But these guys are tight. These guys are really tight. And then Shen was he died, but then he basically was in charge of Fujian. And Zhang Guofan obviously was the guy who overthrew the Taiping Rebellion. But what I'm saying is his grandson and all of their sons were part of this network with Qiang Xuehui wanting to change China. Now that they become this huge force in the provincial level of running reforms that were far and beyond Li, because we're touching the actual constitution or the government system of the Qing Dynasty now. So that's why you've got this whole, so all the sons. So you can think of the young and passionate Chelsea Clintons and George P. Bushes, grouping together. And this is very, very dangerous for the Obama at the time, if you think about it, because it's basically the strong men's kids all ganging up together, and it's all at the point with Kang and Liang at the middle because they were the best communicators. But then Kang actually got kicked out from Beijing by Wang, and this goes back to the personality of Kang, which is very intriguing. He says, because obviously Confucianism is about not changing things, but now he wants to change things. So he has this thing called the Confucius actually wanted to change article, which goes something like this. Remember the first emperor, the Terracotta Warriors with the Great War? He burned all the books, right? And when he burned all the books, when the Han Dynasty came back, they wrote, the old Confucius scholars would write back what they remembered, okay? And then at some point around Jesus' birth, around Augustus Caesar, they found older books. And older books is what the books we're reading today. And what Kang Youwei, with absolutely no justification, said is like, these are old books that we found, these are fake. So we have to go back to the books that were under the memory, books from the memory. And so all the scholars, because like the Wangs of the world, he came first in the imperial exam, so he would have none of it. That's like telling the Pope that Jesus did not live, right? It's a little bit like that. So he would not have this. So, and then Zhang would not have it either, because Zhang came third in the imperial exams. And so because of that, he was actually taken out. And also because, and Liang was actually, he was first received very well by Zhang in Hubei. But because his writings became quite radical, a bit too much for him. It's like, because everything, you can talk about anything, but when you talk about changing this political system, it's a bit like Hong Kong today, like you're touching the very soft spot here. And so he was kicked out, and then because of that, his society actually spread out even more. And so that's what's happening. And so by 1898, 97, end of 97, early 98, two German missionaries got killed in Shandong. And this is actually the trigger point of the Boxer Rebellion, which we'll go back. But at this point, when that happened, the Germans used that as an excuse to take over Jiaozhouwan, which is where Qingdao beer is from. That's why, and then that's why they set up the maybe it's a good thing after all, because they set up the Qingdao brewery, and that's why we get great beer now. And because of that, the Russians were like, oh my gosh, the Germans are coming at you, so we must come and protect you. So let us take Dalian and Liu Shun. And so they took Dalian. And then obviously it's kind of like a kid, you know. He has a Oreo. Why? How come he has 2 Oreos? How come I only have 1? So the French took Guangzhou Wan, and then the British were like, dude, I'm the big guy here. So if you guys take these things, I'm going to take more. So they took Weihai Wei, which is where the chief executive C.Y. Leung's family is from, and also the new territories. They rented out the new territories for a period of 99 years. And because that year was 1898, 99 years, that's why when they want to talk about the re-signing of the lease, the date is 1997. That's why Hong Kong returned to China in 1997, is because of this. And so when that happened, the whole country, including Guangzhou, was like, we need to modernize. We need to be like Japan. Otherwise, China will be the next Poland, which was petitioned in the 1800s. We cannot let that happen. We must reform. And when he reformed, he wanted to see Kang Youwei, but Yi Xing wouldn't let him do it. His uncle wouldn't let him do it because he thought that Kang Youwei was way too radical. But then, so Kang Youwei went to see Rong, who after Li basically had the military power all around Beijing. He would be a main guy in the Boxer Rebellion. Rong and Li and Weng. And at that meeting, Kang Youwei, they were talking about what we were supposed to do. And Kang Youwei, again, back to like his weird personality, Rong asked him, so you can't change the rules of the ancestors. And Kang said something like, the rules of the ancestors are to defend the lands of the ancestors. Now the land of the ancestors, like Taiwan and Manchuria, cannot be defended, so why defend the rules of the ancestors? And then Rong asked him, so how are we going to change? And Kang said, easy. We kill 1 or 2 prime minister level people to scare the people, and that's how we're going to start our reform. And Rong was like, that's me. So Kang got, and so again the meeting was to no avail. And then at this point in time, they actually the emperor actually has been written to talk about that he would if there's no reform, he would die. He would be the last emperor. If there was reform, maybe he would live. So he would go all out, and this goes back to the personality of the staring. This is Guangxu's personality. So he went all out. But his uncle wouldn't let him until in 1898, on May 28th, Yi Xing died. And Yi Xing died. As soon as Yi Xing died, Guangxu then tried to push the reform. But not so easy, because anybody of a secondary rank and above, so this would be a departmental or vice departmental, a government department head or above, must have the approval of Cixi. But he started anyway, and Cixi didn't have a problem with it. So he began with a royal decree on the 11th of June, saying that we will change the system now. And basically, if anything, it's just Li Hongzhang's things plus a little bit more, which is we're going to build, we're going to industrialize, we're going to build the new military, we're going to create new schools. Now that's one of the things. So he created the Jingshi Daxuetang, the capital's university, which is now the Beijing University. So the Beijing University, the founder is actually Guangxu in 1898 because of this reform. And also, and also one thing, and that is to change the examination system. So it's because the old examination system is actually called the Bagu. Bagu is basically a format. You must have an introduction, then an argument, then a second argument, then so on and so forth. And you can never have your own opinion. So when you say, oh, I think that the sun is bright, you can't just say that. You have to say, because Confucius once said, da-da-da. So everything must be either Confucius or Mencius. So nobody left outside of that, and that's why China did not move forward for so many years. And so it's like, okay, we don't do 八股. Let's do 策论. 策论 is basically, we've got an actual problem here. Okay, so what are we going to do with Isis or something like that? So actually, they ask that in like beauty pageants now, apparently. So it's like, they do. But so, yeah. So they ask you like then actual questions. Yeah. And there was a huge uprising of the people who took the exams. They might have a problem with, they might not really like 八股, but if you've been told you have to study that your whole life, and then now you're telling me you're changing, they would have none of that. So the scholars were unhappy. And at the same time, Wang got kicked out. Wang got kicked out because, oh, that's interesting. The people who hate the Empress Dowager said Wang was taken out. People still have that, so that Guangxu would not have any power, because he's the main guy that helped Guangxu. But if you look at, what's interesting is, if you look at a lot of documents, it's the arguments between Guangxu and Wang, because Wang actually capitulated so badly with the Germans, and also because he borrowed money at way too high interest rates when trying to pay off the debt to Japan, and also he tried to stop Guangxu from seeing Kang Youwei, because he thought that Guangxu was going way too fast with all his things. So there are enough reasons to suspect that Guangxu himself took away Wang, but then the Empress Dowager would also be very likely, would also be a suspect as well, and it's very difficult to tell who did it. But anyway, and so finally he saw Kang Youwei, and this again goes back to Kang Youwei's personality. Kang Youwei said he met Guangxu for 4 hours. In the official documents that we find now, he met for 1 hour. And basically, the emperor was not very impressed with him himself, and so he was given a 5th rank in the Foreign Affairs Department. But instead, he had 4 young guys to be in at the time there was the cabinet called 军机处, which is basically the department of serious military intelligence. You could still see it in the Forbidden City, 军机处. And in there, all the main top guys, also all the top scholars, would often be Cici's people. So he had 4 secretaries inside the 军机处. One guy is called, I can take this down now. Yang Rui. And then Liu Xinshou, Lin Xu, and Tan Sitong. So, random young guys, but if you look closely at their backgrounds, you find it very interesting. Yang and Liu, sorry, this is very confusing, I know. Zhang is the main, he's like the number one, what I call the provincial viceroys with actual power, right? Yang and Liu are actually his students. So Zhang's students. Lin Xu is actually the husband of Shen's granddaughter. So he's the Shen side. And Shen obviously has this is all southern Chinese. Tan is Hubei's provincial, the viceroy's, Hubei viceroy's son, and which is under the jurisdiction of Zhang. So he's also a Zhang person. So you think about it this way. These guys are basically, using a term in finance, a cheap call option, a cheap option for Zhang to influence the affairs in the imperial court. Because Zhang was actually been asked to go to Beijing, but a few Chinese peasants killed a Japanese person in Hubei, so he could not leave. But also they're very smart, because why go there? Because he had no idea what's happening between the emperor and the Empress Dowager, right? So he got these 4 people, kind of like his students or his subordinate son, to be there. Now what's very interesting is Zhang's son, also in the modernization camp, was also in Beijing. But he wouldn't go do this. The same way, you would never, the official might do certain things, but the son is never involved because, they're too precious, right? So these are the 4 secretaries that worked very closely with the emperor and who had a lot of influence in the emperor. And what's very interesting, in Chinese culture, politics is always like this. The old term for department head is actually called 尚书, which means help with documents. So basically a secretary. But it eventually became a department name, like head of a department name. And so you look at all these Chinese official names, you look at the original meaning of these words tend to be, the personal helper of the emperor. And because the emperor, whenever he tried to take power from the main prime ministers, he would then use his own secretaries. Actually, the party leader now is still called the party secretary. Right? It's a little bit similar to that. So now we have this this really rampant, with the emperor top down to modernize China as soon as possible. And so with the 100 days, so from June to September, at the end of the reform, we'll go into the end later, he actually had 240 decrees. So kind of like 2 or 3 per day. And a lot of the decrees were kind of like just go to the province and you're like, build factories. And the next day is like build railroads. And the next day is like build telegraph. And another day is like build factories. And it was like, train German soldiers who look like Germans. And then the next day is like train European-looking soldiers. So everybody's like, what the hell? Like it's like these are decrees day in and day out. It's exactly the same stuff.